and then here's what would be like the vertical stile, and that's going to go like that. And so it was a rather time-consuming and humbling process. Hey everyone, welcome back to the shop. This is Bo. In this video, we're going to be making some custom screen doors. Client reached out to me looking for custom screen doors, as you can imagine, and their opening is about 8 foot tall by 6.5 feet wide. The design here is going to be 2 door panels that act like French doors, and so we got 4 rails, all of kind of descending widths, and then of course large stiles for the sides of the door. The design here is going to be based a lot on an episode of This Old House where they built a custom screen door for a home. I like the way that they did the joinery and the way that they were able to use rabbets and half laps and stuff like that to create some more strength and a place for the screen to recess. I have white oak here, rift sawn and quarter sawn. It was tough to find actually full, clear, straight, 9 foot, basically 9 foot pieces in the rough, almost 10 foot pieces in the rough. So got a mix of rift sawn and quarter sawn there. And so I've got some stuff ripped to rough length here, got some parts ripped to rough width, so I don't have to joint those big monster boards, joint any excess material that I end up cutting off anyway. So I did rip them to rough width as well. And yeah, next up, I do some milling. So here we go. Alright, so we are at the point now where we can start cutting some joinery. I've got a couple of sample boards here to use to lay out my joints. I tried to darken some with a magic marker to see if they show up better, but imagine this is a really long stile. This is the inside of the door. It's going to get a rabbet cut out of the interior edge, and that's going to be where the screen's going to be set in. And so in order to cut that rabbet, first I'm running the boards all through I say horizontally and cutting one edge of the rabbet, and then what I'll do, you'll see me flip the boards up on edge here and cut the other face of the rabbet, and that actually frees off a little piece of material, which is very handy, and I'll talk about that here in a moment. And then to cut I'll say the half laps at the very edge of the rails, I'm using my tenoning jig. Alright, so we've got a lot of the work done on the table saw. Here is an example of one of the horizontal rail sections. You can see I've got a rabbet cut out the inside, and that is where the screen's going to go. And the nice thing about cutting it out on the table saw is that this little strip is left over. And that's going to make a nice screen mold. And I tried to mark them all so they stay with the right board, and they'll stay a kind of grain match on the inside, which will look nice. And then this second rabbet that's cut on all the rails acts like a little half lap. So here's one of my stiles on the bench. You see that sits down in there and creates a little half lap joint where those 2 rabbets meet. The half lap's not quite enough strength, at least that size of one. So what I'm also going to do is going to be putting a bunch of loose tenons in this. So what I have here is a sample of one of my horizontal rails. The mortise in the middle. It's a 12 millimeter tenon, and then here's what would be like the vertical stile, and that's going to go like that. And so you can see half lap joint, and then mortise, and that all is going to create a nice rock solid joint. I've got everything laid out on the bench here, all my domino slot locations. I figured out the domino setting I need to do. And so I'm gonna spend the next while cutting all these out, and then I think we'll be getting pretty close to glue this thing up. So here we go. All right, so the doors are out of clamps, so looking pretty good. First thing I want to do is get these cut down to final height. I'll skim the top and then come to the bottom and cut that to final length. Just gotta probably skim both sides a little bit to get them flushed up. And then once I do both doors, I'm actually gonna set them aside for a little bit. I need to work on the jambs. I have them kind of rough cut. They're to width. They are over thickness right now. They're too thick, so I gotta bring them down in thickness a bit. And then I think I'm going to turn my attention to either mortising the hinges, or I've got some other parts to mill, like these are French doors, so there's a center piece that gets permanently attached to one door. I got to cut that down and get that sized, as well as some cover plates. With how big these doors are, and after kind of getting them glued up here and kind of giving them a feel for how rigid they are, I'm still a little concerned that they may warp over time and start to bow. And so my plan is to embed a door straightener on the non-hinge side. And so when I do that, I then need to cover up that hole I just made for the straightener to run. So I'll have to mill some material to act as a cover plate that go over the cutout I'm going to make basically on the inside of the door. So I got some things to do here. I haven't quite felt out my process, but we're going to get to it first by cutting these doors down the length. So here we go. All right, so you can see in front of you here, in front of me here, that we've got a bunch of stain samples. The client is not real sure what color she wants her screen doors to be, so there's a lot of options here, from very, very dark to kind of natural to some whiter, some grayer, browns, or there's a red one in here somewhere. A3's a red one. Let's see what that looks like. Yeah, so here's a reddish color one. Probably hard to see with the glare. The poly's still wet, so there's quite a bit of glare on it. But my process is to do this for every project. Maybe eventually I'll get smart and have a bunch of swatches made, but for now, this is my process. I take that wood from the actual product, from the cutoffs that I'm actually going to use, or that I actually did use, and then I layer on colors with maybe a base layer with water and some Trans-Tint mixed together, and then layer on top a coat of stain, maybe another coat of stain, and then poly, and that poly can be tinted or not tinted to give it overall just a different look or appearance on the wood. So these are going to dry over the next day or two. I'm then going on vacation. When I get back, I'll drop these off to the client so she can choose what finish she wants for the screen door. All right, so I'm finally ready to start mortising in the hinges for the doors and the jambs. I've laid everything out on the doors. I'm going to use 3 hinges per door. The doors are about 40 pounds right now, and so looking at some online resources, that's well within the range of just 3 of these hinges. So that should be fine, even with how wide they are, should be fine. But before I start to, the one challenge I have is with the length of these doors. It's a pretty tight fit over by my bench, so I'm going to build some door bucks first. All right, so got the door bucks made. Just I didn't talk about them before I started making them, so I figured I'd talk about them a little bit now. So this is all made from, it's like 15-30 seconds BC plywood, cheap stuff. Each set of door bucks was made from one 2-foot by 4-foot sheet of plywood. And so what it is, really simple, right? You got 1/2-inch piece on the bottom, got these little feet and risers, I'll talk about them in a moment. You then got 2 vertical uprights, and then you've got some diagonal braces to keep it stiff. And then I've added some padding inside here. It's essentially just some 3/4 inch mat that you can walk on, or for gym floors or whatever. I had like 3 or 4 tiles left over, so I cut some chunks out of that. And then I drove a screw in the center of it and compressed it really far so the screw doesn't actually end up touching the door when it clamps. But the reason for these little feet is that when something sits on it, like a door, it actually causes the tops to move together, kind of bites the door, if you will, and holds it tight. And so it works pretty good. I've got the first door on the buck over here. The first one I made, I kind of screwed up the angle here. I pre-cut all my pieces and cut this brace piece too short. So on the ones on the ground, maybe you can see it. If you see it, this brace piece is really short below here. So actually this is flexing, the top, the vertical upright is flexing when the door moves back and forth. So not a great execution there on my part, but it's good, it's solid. The second set I made though, I adjusted that and adjusted the angles of my diagonal pieces, and they're super stout now. So when I put this door in there, which I'm gonna do right now because I gotta get it out of the way, oh geez, as I trip on it and knock it over. And it's all made just with screws and, I'm sorry, not screws, Jesus, listen to me. Staples, glue, and then the padding pieces were held in with screws like I mentioned. Oh boy. There's one. All right, get this one in there. And there we go. And so now that this is in there, this one is super rock solid. Like, this one's not going anywhere. It's really solid. So I'll be able to do all my mortising and stuff like that with them in the bucks instead of trying to clamp it on my bench. So here we go. That's up next. We're gonna mortise some hinges. All right, we've got the hinges mounted on the doors and the jambs, and they're all lined up, working great. I removed the hinges and the jambs from the door. I've got the inside facing up right now, and I've been going back and forth whether I should put a door straightener in this door or not. I don't really think it's required, since the doors right now are still super straight. But I don't know, I want these doors to be the last doors they'll ever need. And so I think I'm gonna put the door straightener in there. What it takes is a couple 35mm holes and then a long groove connecting them. And then I'll have to cover it up with a strip like this that'll get screwed into place, which is not something I love to do, because it's, once again, not real attractive. But I just feel like I should do it, you know? And if they never have to use the door tightener, or the door straightener, excuse me, then that's great. But in the case, in 5 years down the road, if it starts to bow a little bit, just pop this off with a couple screws, a couple quick adjustments with the Allen screw, or Allen key, and the door will be straight again. So I think I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna drill some holes, route some grooves, so here we go. So after getting the doors built and putting these door straighteners in there, I've tried them out, and the doors are very stiff, and so it takes a lot of tension in the straightener rod to actually make any type of adjustment at all. But it is capable of doing it. It just probably not as effective as what it was designed for. The straighteners are designed for, straightening MDF panels, so 3/4 inch MDF panels. This door is quite a bit more stiff than that, but I'm still not looking back on it. I'm happy I did it. If I do need to make some small tweaks, 5, 10 years down the road, the option's there. And if I don't ever need to touch it, great too. The little cover piece I put over top, it's really a beautiful piece of quarter sawn oak, so it still looks nice from the inside. Want to take a moment and talk a little bit about sanding. I know for most people it's just pure unbridled joy and excitement, and it is rather boring. But sometimes it's you can kind of get in the groove and just go with it. Right? You're just sanding. Yesterday I spent about 6.5 hours sanding, and it wasn't too bad. I've got one whole door sanded. I started at 60, 80, 120, 180. And I've got all the other pieces sanded, so all the small little covers and fillers, the little middle support piece for the two doors, all the screen mold, all that was sanded yesterday as well, up to 180. And so I only have one door left, which is great. I also took that time during sanding to create all the edge profiles, so I've got an 1/8 inch roundover on all the edges of the doors. A lot of the trim pieces have chamfers or roundovers depending on where they're at on the door itself. So today I've got one door left to sand and do some of the edge treatments, and then we'll be ready for some finish. So let's get to it. All right, the polyurethane has been applied, about 6 or 7 coats in total. It was a rather time-consuming and humbling process. It was very challenging to apply polyurethane. I haven't done it before, and it was tough, but it's done. And now we're about to put the screens in. I've never done this before myself, so we are going to kind of learn this together as we go. My plan is that the door is up on some blocks here, basically just a big piece of wood. For this large screen area, my intention is to actually clamp or pull the door down just a little bit to the bench to kind of give it a U shape so the ends are closer together. And so when I let the clamps go, it'll hopefully help stretch the screen even more on this upper section. The lower ones I'm not as worried about since they're smaller. I'm going to lay the screen out. My thought is I'll use some clamps to kind of hold it in place and then stretch it with my hand and use a battery-powered stapler to staple around the perimeter. That's at least my initial plan. Let's see how it goes. Let's get to it.
So you can see me using a hammer here. Since white oak is so hard, not all my staples would fully seat. So I took the hammer around and just pounded, just made sure they're all fully seated with the hammer, which worked pretty well. And now this interior screen mold was actually pretty time consuming to do. I'm trying to get a nice, 16th inch gap between the door and the screen mold. And so I'm using essentially just cutoffs, like you can see this cutoff I'm just putting there now, to help get the length of each piece right. And so is somewhat iterative, cut one piece, bring some scraps over, go cut again, bring it back, and then just work your way around and using a little pin nails to hold them in place.
All right, so the doors are finished, the screens are installed, all the molding's in place. They are ready to be installed. The one thing that I've been struggling with a bit is how to install these large doors by myself. Trying to get the hinges aligned between the door and the jamb is challenging on small doors, even on inside the house, where you can actually get half the hinge on one door, half the hinge on the other, and bring them together and drop the pin in. That still can be a challenge. These doors don't have pins because they have the hinges that are kind of like torsion springs. So that means I have to get it all lined up to mount the hinges. Doing some research online of how people do this. There's some products out there that help you kind of support the door and get it lined up. They all seem very simple in nature. So I'm going to make some here just out of some hardwood and some leveling feet that you'd use for like a workbench or something like that. Really simple. They almost look like the door bucks I made before. You got a platform on the bottom. The door's going to sit on this. You got some vertical pieces. These blocks here for strength, glue strength, and then these were the leveling feet and go to help you adjust the door up and down or pitch it in and out, whatever the case may be. Got some lumber here on my table saw, and we're going to get started and make these little jobbers. So here we go. So I wanted to give a quick explanation and demo of these little, I don't know what you want to call them, little door helpers. So simply, it's just some blocks of wood glued and screwed together. You have a long, these are for toggle clamps, but they're really long threaded bars with a pad on the end, and I just put a little star knob on end of it and a nut to double nut that in place. That clamps the door against these little pieces. You see the one in the back is really tall, and that's because if this would be the hinge side of the door, that would be the non-hinge side. So you can clamp that way up high in a stile to give it stability side to side. And so all I have to do is to help, first I have to get the door kind of close, within an inch or so. But then I can use a drill. I've got a hex head in here, and I can just lower or raise. I just lower and raise the front and back as needed to help pitch and align the door. All right, so tomorrow is door install day. A couple days ago, I went to the client's house and removed their existing screen door and did some other work. And as I was removing their existing screen door, I realized that I missed something in my initial assessment and drawing, and I should say drawing, initial design of the screen door. And that is that on the front of the house, where the existing screen door is, and the jamb was covering this up, is that there has to be a kind of a recess cut in my jamb. Basically, I'm going to be cutting out, I know it's kind of far away here, but I'm going to be cutting out a rather large chunk of this jamb to go around some of the existing framework that's on the house. Luckily, I am removing material and not having to add it back, so I got my dado stack set up in the table saw, set to the appropriate height, which is a 1/2 inch. I want to remove a 1/2 inch material off the bottom, and I got my fence set up 1 3/16 because that's how much I want to save of my jamb, because my door is about 1 1/8 inch. If I leave about 1 3/16 here, that'll give me about 1/16 of an inch to play with, to get the door lined up within my jamb as well as the existing framework in the house. So I'm going to cut this, and then I'm going to start packing up all the tools I need for install day. So here we go.
All right, so filming the door installation was a little bit tough. The porch that I'm on is not very deep, so it's hard to get a good angle to get the whole door. But what you see here is the masking tape is where I'm going to be drilling holes to mount the jamb to the house. But I'm also drilling using a Forstner bit to drill a larger hole that I'm going to plug with oak dowels, and then flush cut later. So the masking tape helps protect the jamb finish. And here you can see me, I'm using those leveling feet to adjust the door height and pitch and angle to get all the hinges lined up with the mortises. And then I'm now attaching the hinge to the mortise. And I shut this first door and I was like, oh man, that is beautiful fit. It looked great. And the second one, get that into place here in a moment, which didn't take near as long as the first one. I guess I just got lucky on this one. I'll get this one mounted, and in my design I was tight. I was leaving myself about a 16th nominal, which the jamb was a little bit smaller, so I ended up with with no gap and a little bit of overlap, which is fine. So I'm going to take a bunch of measurements, do some marking out on the doors themselves, and then I remove them, take them over to my little workstation over here, and get the track saw out, and I'll trim. I think I trimmed the top of one door and the inside edge. Yeah, there's the inside edge here. This is where the two doors meet. And then doing a round over with the router and some sanding. So I remount the hinges and take that back over and mount it into place. And now this is the second door. This is the right-hand door. And this had the bottom to be trimmed. And then just a tiny bit on the hinge side, down at the very bottom of the door below the bottom hinge, it seemed to be pinching a bit on the opening. So I trimmed a little bit off there, routed the edge, did a little sanding, and went back and mounted this door. And would you look at that, 2 screen doors with a nice little gap and reveal all around them. And now I am installing the little, what the heck do you call those things? Little closures, little kind of those little gas strut things that go on the screen doors to act as hold opens or to keep them from slamming too hard. Just the last 2 things to do is attach the handles, which I'm doing here, and then attach that center strip to the one of the doors. And for that, I just use some construction adhesive and some pin nails to hold it in place while the construction adhesive dried. And then apply some finish to those cut edges. And over the next few weeks, I come back and apply a couple more coats of finish to those cut edges just to fully protect them. But this project turned out awesome. I'm really happy with it. Clients are really happy with it. And if you made it to the end of this video, thank you for that. I would appreciate it if you could give it a thumbs up or a like. And if you do like these videos, feel free to subscribe. I got plenty more projects upcoming. Thanks, and have a good one.